Ethan, you got a camera?
I do not.
Okay. All right. So how's the week been so far? Good. Sam, do you have a camera? All right, cool. All right, so over the next hour or so, we have an open masterclass about saxophone technique. There's a lot of things that I think we could cover, so this is always a lot more fun if you guys have questions, but if you have pencils and paper, I want you to write stuff down. It's going to be a lot of information coming pretty quick because we only have 55 minutes. First thing I want you guys to consider is that when you practice scales, there's two ways to practice them, linear and then vertical. Linear is what we've been doing for most of our lives. So like if I played a B flat major scale, every note comes after one another in a row like that. Vertical implies that there's some kind of aspect or distance of skipping, all right, in between notes. So if you guys have practiced arpeggios, that's one vertical implication of a scale. If you guys have practiced intervals, that's another vertical implication of a scale. If you're playing thirds, for instance, one octave, same key. Okay, to me, you're still practicing a scale, but now you're chopping it up into an interval. And there's again, you're not playing one note next to one another, you're skipping a note in between. So by a show of hands, how many of you practice scales every day in some way, shape, or form? All right, if you have your hand raised, how many of you guys also practice intervals every day? Anybody? Okay, all right, so whether you do it every day or not, whether you're doing scales and intervals, there's 4 directions you should do it. So write them down: all up, all down, one up, one down, and one down, one up. So again, all up, all down, one up, one down, and then one down, one up. These directions refer to the way you're going to play the information, whether it's a scale or whether it's an arpeggio or an interval. So what I just played there 2 seconds ago would have been thirds, all up, because every single third pair is ascending. So 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4, 6, so on and so forth. Okay, everybody understand that that's the idea of all the third pairs are going the same direction, right? They're all ascending. Okay, so the sound that I'm going to be playing is still going to be ascending as we go through the scale on this next one, but the direction is going to be flipped. So I'm going to start on 3. I'm going to play 3, 1, 4. Descending as we ascend through the sound. Does that make sense to everybody? Just give me a thumbs up if it does. Okay, cool. So let's have somebody try that. Sam, can you try playing your C major scale? Okay, just do the first direction. So all up for me in thirds.
Yep.
Try the opposite, or the down, down now. So 3, 3, 1, 4, 2, this kind of thing. Cool. So now, if you can do one direction up, one direction down, you can start doing mixing and matching. So the first mix and match one's going to be 1 up, 1 down. So 1, 3, 4, 2, 3, 5, 6, 4. This kind of thing sounds like this. Christian, why don't you do that for us? Yeah, great. Okay, no, that's cool. That's great. Christian, why don't you try the last one, which is down up? Okay, so 3, 1, 2, 4, 5, 3. All right, cool. Christian, try the same thing with sevenths.
Sevenths?
Yeah.
Just up, up, or
you can do it. Yeah, whatever direction you want. So yeah, so those are arpeggios, right? And now that's my fault. How about the interval of like a diatonic seventh?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I'm picking on Christian because he's a little bit older, and I worked in the past a little bit too. But we're just kind of, you can do this interval thing. You can do these directions, I should say, with any interval you want. So seventh is pretty difficult because there's a lot of distance, right? It's also your embouchure does weird things. Intonation becomes an issue potentially. So as I do this in up down fashion, it sounds like this. All right. So let's write this down. Okay, you can do the 4 directions for intervals, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths. I'm gonna pick on Tate here and make him do octaves. Okay, so Tate, you got your horn. Let's have you play your C major scale on octaves. Okay, so just all up. So same principle, but now you're just gonna play the scale on octaves all up.
Like C, C, D, D, E, E, etc.
Yep, you got
Okay.
it. Perfect, right? Okay, now, if I would have said, probably 10 minutes ago, who have you practiced scales and octaves? I bet the answer would be nobody, right? If you do practice scales and octaves, great. Now you have at least 4 directions to practice them. But I think the way that I like to think about improvising, by the way, like I wish I had the whole week to do master classes for 6 hours every day because I could talk forever about the importance of this stuff. But this is not, this is going to feel maybe like mechanical busy work to some of you. And that's okay because at the very worst, if you do this stuff in all 12 keys, I'm being very nice, it's in C, right? But if I ask you guys to do this in F sharp, it might be a little bit difficult for everybody, I think. But at the very worst, if you do this every single day, with one interval, or you're going to become a better saxophone player. And at the best, maybe you actually integrate it into how you improvise, right? I think intervallic diversity is something that you hear a lot out of saxophone players of my generation, and certainly between my generation and the age 50. You know what I mean? Saxophone players like Chris Potter, Seamus Blake, Ben Wendell, Mark Turner, Dana Stevens, all these guys that I'm really interested in. They have a really good command of just the instrument themselves. Dinah McCaslin, anyway, I just want to say that out front that, yeah, this is going to seem maybe a little bit rigid and mechanical, but that's honestly what I think the technical portion of your practice should feel like for the most part. And then there's a way to hopefully ingrain that in your playing over the long haul. Let's go to Andrew real quick. Andrew, do you practice diatonic 7 chords ever?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. Okay. So can you play for me slowly? Christian actually played it a couple seconds ago. Can you play for me just diatonic 7 in the key for me?
In what key? Sorry.
The key of C. That's gonna sound like this. And so on and so forth. Yeah, perfect. Sounds like you do it to me, right? So now we could do that same thing with up-down direction, right? So if we did up-down direction, it would be like this. And I always kind of like think about it like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because I guess you, like, if you climbed a ladder, you probably stay up wherever you're going to. You're climbing a ladder, coming down, climbing a ladder, coming down. It's kind of how I think about it in my head. So. Right, you want to try that, Andrew?
Sure.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so this is the vibe for everything. All 4 directions. You can do it with arpeggios, intervals. I think that the idea of doing the different directions is easier for the brain to compute when we do intervals. So let's try to do it with scale segments. So raise your hand if you ever practice scales and segments. So anything less than just the full scale, like 4-note segment. Okay, Sam, Tate. All right, so check it out. Write this down. We're gonna do scales and segments. Okay, so however many notes per segment you want is up to you. I'm going to start with 4 because it's even and it's, I think, easier to remember. But you could do 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s. Okay, so what we're going to do is play the same scale, and we're going to play 4 notes at a time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, this kind of thing. Okay, so it sounds like this. All right, so who haven't I picked on? Let's see. Alexander, can we have you try that? Okay, just 4 notes at a time on your C major scale. Yeah, beautiful, man. Great. Okay, so we're just playing 4 notes at a time, right? So let's have a directional change. Sam, pick up your horn, play me that same pattern, okay? But we're gonna do up down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, 4. I'm not singing because I think I have a pretty voice. I'm singing because we've heard this a million times in jazz education. If you can sing it, you can play it, right? Helps re-ingrain, just your connection to the instrument, I think. So let's try this, Sam. Up 4, then down 4, up 4. Great. Yeah, good job. Christian, let's try going down 5, up 5. So now we're changing the segment to be 5-note segments, and we're changing the direction to be down, up. Yeah, so I think you actually started up and then went down, which is totally fine. Can you try going down, up first? So start on G. Yeah, good. So, one thing we haven't talked about at this point is articulation patterns. So if you really want to give yourself an extra challenge, you can also think about where you're tonguing, right? Anybody know when we play in 5/8 or when we subdivide 5/8 notes, what are the most typical groupings that we have to split 5 into 2 groups? Can't really be even because you can't have 2 and a half before you articulate. I mean, I suppose, yeah, 3 and 2. Okay, so, and then what's the other one besides 3 and 2?
2,
2
3.
and 3.
2 and 3, right? Yeah, so 3 and 2 and 2 and 3. So if we want to add that extra challenge, we go tongue 2, tongue. If it was 2, 3, it'd be tongue 2, tongue 2, 3, tongue 2, tongue 2, 3, tongue 2, tongue 2, 3. If it was the flip 3, 2, it'd be tongue 2, 3, tongue 2, tongue 2, 3, tongue 2, tongue 2, 3, tongue 2. Now, if you're into this, which I hope you are, you could really make it difficult for yourself by switching those groupings every other one. So if I'm doing, let me just play all up, and I'm going to do 2, 3. Okay, so. All right, so I play 2, 3, right? Tongue 2, tongue 2, 3. Now I'm going to do a little bit slower. I'm going to go tongue 2, tongue 2, 3, tongue 2, 3, tongue 2, tongue 2, tongue 2, 3, tongue 2, 3, tongue 2. So write these numbers out on a piece of paper so you can see them in front of you. 2, 3, 3, 2. Okay, 2, 3, 3, 2. And I call this a mirror because you're mirroring in reverse what you see. The first part is 2, 3, and then that flips and becomes 3, 2. That's how you're going to organize your information. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Sounds like this. Make sense to everybody? Okay. So again, this is a tremendous amount of stuff I'm throwing at you in an hour. Some of this, like the stuff we did 10 minutes ago, is probably going to be on the easier side of things. Some of it might take, hopefully, a lot of this takes practice. Even the easier stuff and all 12 keys will take practice. I will send Marcus a PDF that has all the stuff, most of the stuff written out as well, so you have it. But I just want you, I think it always better write stuff down as we go along. Okay.
You can put the PDF in the chat if you want.
Okay, cool. All right. Good to know. Tate, actually, can I have you play your C major scale in 2/3 grouping for me, 1 octave, slowly?
2, 3, or 2, 3, 3, 2.
No, just the 2/3. Let's just keep it light right now. So 2/3, 1 octave.
Oh, one more. Am I segmenting it in 5 notes, or am I just?
Yeah, 5 notes. So it'll go tongue 2, tongue 2, 3, and then the next 5 notes.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, good. Okay, cool. So, guys, write this down. If you want a really good book that'll kick your butt pretty bad on articulation, there's a flute articulation book called the Gobert and Toffanel, um, and it's been around for like seems like forever. It is wickedly difficult. You know, it gives you articulations. I think in the jazz world, we get kind of lazy about how we think about articulations. You know, my teacher George Garzone that I have for the first 2 years of college, he my first lesson I'll never forget, he said, sounds like you listened to one Chris Potter record and got the wrong idea. Which is pretty dark because that was like, you know, Chris Potter's my hero. But what he went on to say, thankfully, was that I was over articulating. And George has an extremely strange way of thinking about articulating. If you ask him, he says he never uses his tongue. He articulates from diaphragm and with his fingers. The first part I can get down with, the articulating with your fingers part, I still have never really, I'm like, I don't know if I believe that. But the moral of that story is that, you know, I think we have to be aware, much more so than we probably are, of what is going on with our tongue, right? Anybody ever played a line that's fast and it's sounding kind of like it's not the notes that are a problem. It's like, oh, something's muddy here. What is it? I know I have. And most of the time it's like something to do with our tongue, you know, not being able to get it out of the way, or maybe it's in the wrong position, or maybe we are not thinking about it. Those kind of factors can be kind of nipped in the bud if we practice things like this, and if we offer practice stuff out of this book that I'm suggesting. Also, how many, by a show of hands, have ever worked through like the Lenny Niehaus etude books? Anybody? Yeah, those are great. If you haven't, I would strongly recommend that you check them out and get the like from basic all the way to advanced. Basic is going to be extremely easy for probably everybody. Advanced is difficult for everybody through college, you know. And I think that you know, we may get to it here, but how many of you are actively trying to work on altissimo into your playing? Okay, so if you are, those etudes are fantastic because they're all written in for most part, they're written in a range where you could bump everything up an octave. And so like the advanced book has become something that, you know, I'll refer to a lot to work on that, that kind of thing, you know, playing stuff in the altissimo that's kind of in an etude format. Anyway, any questions so far? I will just keep like just bulldozing through this. So ask me questions. Anybody? All right. So we were talking about different groupings. We might as well, since we're already there, let's talk about sevens. Okay, so let's have somebody play. Let's go back to Andrew. Okay, Andrew, can you play me your C major scale, but in segments of 7 notes at a time, and no articulation, just slurred the whole time. Yeah, great. Okay, so write these down. The 2 common ways we divide 7 are going to be 4 plus 3, and then the flip 3 plus 4. Okay, within the 4, I would suggest that you articulate 2 and 2. So, you know, you could write 4 things down here: 4 3, and then 3 4, and then you could write 2 2 3, and then 3 2 2. Okay, so if I'm playing the same thing that Andrew just did, and I'm going 4 3, I'm gonna tongue every 2/8 notes. So tongue 2, and then tongue 2 3, tongue 2, 1 2 3, tongue 2, 1 2 3. Okay, and that gives you the real overall impression of 7/8, right? How many of you have played something in an odd meter, either 5/8 or 7/8 or 5/4, 7/4? Okay, good. So all of us, right? How many of you felt like, oh man, this is difficult. I wish I was better at doing this, right? Everybody. I'm sure everybody. I don't know. The first time that I saw 7/4 was when I was with Marcus at Betty Carter 13 years ago. And it was one of the most challenging 2-week periods of my entire life because it was original music and almost everybody had 2 songs where I had to count. And I'm still horrible at counting, you know, but especially in odd times, it was like just terrifying. So if we can try to work on things that help reduce that stress, I think it would be helpful. Okay, so if I'm going to play the same thing you just did, Andrew, okay, in 4 3 or 2 2 3, it sounds like this. All right, makes sense to everybody? And again, you can do what I call mirroring. So if we're gonna do a mirror of this, you could go 4 3, then 3 4, You could also go 3-4 and then 4-3. If you really, really want to go for a challenge, you can start mixing and matching from 5 and 7. So you could go 4-3 and then 3-2. 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 3, 1-2, 3, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 3, 1-2, 3, 1-2. Right? You should never be bored with scales, at least for like 4 years after this masterclass. Okay, there should be plenty of things that you can do. And mathematically, it's groovy because 7 and 5 is 12. So if you're playing over a blues or something, 12 eighth notes gets you through a bar and a half of time. So if I'm playing over the first 4 bars of the blues and I have 2 iterations of these 12 eighth notes, right? I would have 3 bars plus 1 full bar of another eighth notes. Does it make sense? Because you have 32 eighth notes in a 4-bar phrase. So if I played, if I played 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2, and then you're at the 5th bar. Does that make sense? And again, this is some stuff that we won't cover in the next 25 minutes. But like I said earlier, I try to give you little snippets in this time that we have of like, okay, why is this important? Where could we apply it? Because it's nothing is more aggravating, and I'll fully admit, than just practicing technique forever and never applying it, right? Now, let's be real. If you don't practice technique, then there are always going to be certain things, whether it's transcriptions or playing fast or whatever, that are just going to be way harder for you or impossible. Right? So write this down as a general thing, okay? I think people ask me all the time, what metronome mark should I get to? My teacher told me when I was young that if you want to feel pretty much comfortable with any playing situation, being able to play all your scales and exercises at chord note equals 180 beats per minute and eighth notes at that, that's a really good benchmark. So essentially being able to play lines at 360. Yes, there are going to be situations where you play in excess of 360. No, it's not going to be the majority of the time. It's going to be in situations where you're probably going to be on edge anyway, unless you call the tempo yourself. So I think 180 and eighth notes is a really good place to be at as far as a benchmark. Let's talk about how to practice scales. I'm going to play something for you, and I want you to raise your hand if this is how you played scales ever in your entire life. Sound familiar to anybody? Okay, so what am I doing? I'm playing all the what of what?
All the modes of...
Yeah, all the modes of a major scale, right? And that's fantastic. That's great. It's a great exercise. What's the only maybe like boring thing about playing all the modes of a major scale, potentially? If you have a really good handle on it, let's say. Like anybody, let me ask you a different way. Anybody in this call bored with practicing their scales that way? Raise your hand. No? Okay, good. If you are, then I have something else to offer for you. Okay, so essentially the reason why that to me becomes a little bit boring after a while is that it's the same notes over and over again, right? Nothing changes. What does change is where you start the scale, right? And by consequence of that, the chord that goes along with it also changes, right? So I really don't care if you know the modes named by their names. I mean, it's important, but what I do care is the difference between like Dorian, dominant, half diminished, this kind of stuff, right? And so I think that it'd be a good thing for you if you're practicing scales that way to go through it and like a crazy person, say everything out loud. Okay, so I will now demonstrate for your benefit. And it's probably going to seem like I'm crazy, but here it is, right? You're going to play each scale and you're going to go through a series of steps. So I'm going to play first scale. Okay, that's a C major scale, right? That goes with a C major 7 chord. Okay, and furthermore, if I need to, I'll say, oh yeah, triangle means major. So C triangle 7, right? That's pretty definitive. Somebody tell me the old school Greek name for this scale. It's the first mode of major called?
Ionian.
Ionian, right? Okay, so nobody cares if you know that it's called Ionian unless you're a teacher, and then even then your students are probably not going to care. Okay, what I do care about is that that the C major scale goes to the C major 7 chord. Now let's take it one step further. C major 7 in terms of function. Okay, I like to think about function in 3 ways. Write this down. Chords can be static, they can be moving towards a resolution, or they can be a resolution themselves. Chords can be static, they can be moving towards a resolution, or they can be a resolution themselves. Okay, so in terms of C major 7, if we try to think about it in those terms, definitely we can all agree that it's a chord that is resolved to, right? Because it's a 1 chord. So think about 2, 5, 1, right? Can we say that it's a chord that moves towards a resolution? Is that something that we typically see, like a major chord in the context of moving towards a resolution? No. What chords do we typically see that move towards a resolution?
Like dominant chords.
Dominant chords, yeah, okay. The only caveat with that being, like, if you hear Bird play something like over 2/5, that middle thing that I played, ba da ba da ba ba ha ha ha, that's a major 7. Okay, Bird plays it all the time. He'll play tritone substitution, but a major 7 chord instead of a dominant 7 chord. And in that instance, I suppose you could say that major 7 is functioning as going towards a resolution. But that's the only time I would ever consider that ever. So let's just say broadly that major 7 is in 2 camps. It's being resolved to, right? Okay, so it's a destination, or it's static. Okay, somebody give me an example of a tune somewhere where you have a major chord that is not in a position of being resolved to, and it's more of like an open-ended static thing. Anybody have an idea? What's one tune that comes to mind, or a part of a tune? Y'all know about Joe Henderson? Okay, so think about inner urge. Inner urge. Those chords are all static to me. I mean, there's definitely a progression in there, but it's not functional. So write this down. 2 camps of harmony, generally speaking: functional and non-functional. Functional is what you see all the time: 2, 5, 1, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, so on and so forth. Non-functional is typically where there are intervallic relationships to the tune, but they're not working in a way that we see as being 5-1, or things that are typical to the Great American Songbook. So a lot of people think, and this is just a generalization, which is not true at all, but I'm trying to be humorous. A lot of people that are younger think that like modern jazz started with Robert Glasper or something, right? And like this crossbreeding of hip hop, which is totally incorrect. But I mean, it's great that we all like are aware of that really important kind of cross pollination. But that's been happening forever. But we have to look in jazz history way further back than that. I think one of the greatest examples of modern jazz compositions is anything out of the Joe Henderson songbook. So if you're not hip to Joe, check out these 3 songs: Serenity, Punjab, and Inner Urge. Okay. In each of those, there's glimpses of functional harmony, but there are a lot of other examples in those tunes of chord changes that are working in a way that are non-functional. All right. And again, you can unpack this stuff with your private teacher, or if you're in KC with Marcus, over the course of the semester. But yeah, I would just say that like I keep going back to Joe with my students at UMKC and in my own studio, and it's incredible. It's incredible. He's an amazing composer, and it was done in like 1960. You know what I mean? So, anywho, that's the first mode, right? C major. So if you think about it being chordally, functionally, it's going to be resolved to, it's going to be static, okay? So we go through the same thing, and we make sure that we're good with all the chords. So next mode of major is Dorian. So I play D Dorian, and I would say D minor 7, okay? D minor 7, in terms of those 3 camps, is it static, is it resolving to, or is it moving towards? It can be all 3, and let me explain. How many of you guys know what modal music is, right? Modal music is like, so what? Right? Modal basically is, again, non-functional. It's just a couple of different chords, right? So if you listen to like, so what, that's a prime example of modal music, because the chords are at position. There's really no 5-1 resolution happening, right? It's just 2 chords that are static. So D minor, in how we're thinking about it doing this exercise, can be static. It can also be moving towards a resolution if it's a 2-5-1, right? And it can also be resolved to if it's a 1 chord in a minor 2-5-1, right? So if it's in the position of being a 1 chord in a minor 2-5-1, it can actually fit all 3. Okay. And again, some of this stuff is going to come really quickly to you, and some of this, if you look back on the recording, you're going to be like, what was that again? And that's fine. Okay. I hope this isn't all just like, yeah, okay, whatever. The very least, I think it's helpful to think about scales like this in all 12 keys, again, because there are going to be certain modes like the next one we're going to get to where most people don't have a good way of thinking about it. So third mode, write this down also if you're not really familiar with the modes, or you need a review. But the third mode of major is called Phrygian. Okay. Phrygian, Phrygian. Okay, somebody give me the chord symbol that you would have for E Phrygian. Anybody have an idea? Sam, what do you think?
E minor flat 9, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So raise your hand if you've ever seen an E minor flat 9 chord in your entire life, or a minor flat 9 chord. Anybody? Very rare, right? You're not wrong at all. We'd also have to have some other kind of determinant, right? Because if we're in the key of C, we would have a C natural, right? Which would be flat 13. So it'd be an even weirder chord. It'd be E minor 7, flat 9, flat 13. And, hand to God, in how many years I've been playing? 20 years of playing saxophone, I have not, maybe but one time, seen minor 7, flat 9, flat 13. Okay, so this is important to know. Write this down. Typically, Phrygian, okay, is represented by two different ways. If the composer wants to hook you up, they'll write the root of the scale and they'll write the abbreviation PHR, which is great. If they do that, there's literally no ambiguity. If they want to be like everybody else that I've ever worked with, they're going to write a chord that is ambiguous, which is going to be the tonic triad of the key that the scale comes from. Okay, so if you're playing E to E in the key of C, then the scale comes from the key of C. Does that make sense? Okay, so C over the bass note, which is E. C over E. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'll say it one more time. To represent Phrygian, you could play the tonic triad of the key that the scale comes from over the bass note of the scale. Okay, so doing a different key. If we're in the key of E and we go to the third note of the E major scale, we have G sharp. So if I wanted to write G sharp Phrygian as a chord symbol, I would take E, okay, and put it over G sharp. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. In terms of functionality, Phrygian is kind of a weird one. I just call it a vibe chord because most of the time you're not going to be resolving to a Phrygian. You're not going to be moving towards a resolution with the Phrygian, and you're definitely not going, it's static. Static is probably the only one, right? But like Phrygian chords happen in tunes of like Herbie Hancock, or Wayne Shorter, something like that. And it's a lot more of what I just call like a vibe, a vibe chord, which is, I know, very pedagogical. Okay, but that's the best I got for that one. And again, like when I work with students, I typically find that people have a pretty good comprehension if they're working on modes of major, Dorian, and dominant, and sometimes Locrian, right? But almost nobody is like, yeah, I'm really good with Phrygian and Aeolian. Why is that? Because we don't see those chords but a fraction of the time. I know Christian is in college and Tate is in college. Is anybody else in college in this call? No? Okay. So when you get to college and people start writing tunes and you play hard music all the time, you'll find people write chords that are like, I've never seen that before. Or maybe like, I've never seen it written this way, right? So this is where like, you just coming back to the basics is really important. So I guess what I'm trying to say too is if you work on this stuff now when you're in high school, when you get to college, instead of feeling like, oh my God, I don't know, I've never seen that before, you can be like, oh, I've seen this, it's just written a different way. And here we go. Right? I think long-term, guys, your success in music is boiled down to a couple things. This is a little bit going on tangential thing here, but being a great person is the most important thing. Being a good musician is, I think, second most important to that. And then when you're put in situations that are high pressure or that you want to deliver on, it certainly doesn't help to have prepared for it in like the nth degree, right? To the nth degree. So you can see chords, you can hear chords on a piece of paper and say, okay, this is a part of a larger picture here. And I know that from studying chords this way and thinking about how they work with one another, right? Or what their most common tendencies are functionally. Raise your hand if you ever like found yourself playing a solo and you're thinking very much like this chord, this chord, this chord, this chord. Anybody feel that way before? I know I have. Okay, that's one way to play jazz. It's also really difficult if you can't. It's easier, I should say, if you can see. Okay, these 4 bars constitute this progression, right? Or these 4 bars, or these 8 bars. My teacher I had most at MSM was Rich Perry. Write that name down. Most people don't know who that is. Okay, Rich Perry is one of the most underrated, undersung, ridiculous tenor players. Period, hands down, like across the entire history of music. And when he looks at a form, he doesn't have to look at, like, it doesn't matter. He just plays whatever he wants. And I know that it sounds very loosey-goosey, but he can listen to one. I'll point you towards the record. Check out Live at the Kitano, Kitano. There's 3 volumes. I think volume 3 is probably the most accessible for you because it has everybody's favorite F blues, Billy's Bounce. I hate that song. That song needs to just go away. Hate that song, okay? But the only recording period that I'll listen to over and over and over of Billy's Bounce is this version of Rich Perry's because he plays so out on it and it's so beautiful. So check it out. It's amazing. Okay. And I should say this too, I'm very easy to get a hold of. And then you guys, I love hearing from you. So if you listen to that track and you're like, this is terrible, explain to me why this is good, send me a text. I want to know about it. I'd rather point you in a different direction. If you're like, wow, this is incredible, I have like literally 30 other records to suggest to you. All right. But keep the dialogue open. I really enjoy hearing from you guys. So my email, you can probably get it from Marcus, but it's just adamlarsonmusician@gmail.com. I know Tate's diligently putting stuff in. If you want to put that in there in the chat, Tate, that'd be awesome. adamlarsonmusician@gmail.com. But yeah, man, Rich Perry, he definitely doesn't think bar to bar. Okay. So anyway, let's kind of go warp speed here on the next couple modes. All right. So the third mode of major is called Lydian, right? So in this key, we play F to F in the key of C major. That'd be F Lydian. Chord symbol that goes to Lydian is major 7 sharp 11. Okay, so it'd be F major 7 sharp 11. If you cover up the sharp 11, you're still left with the functional chord of F major, right? So the sharp 11 part is what we call a color. Okay, so essentially, if you look at the chord and it looks like you could cover up something and it would give you the basic version of the chord, then all the function that goes with the basic version of the chord is going to go with that color. Does that make sense? Okay, so you can play a 2-5-1 and resolve to the 1 chord and play or imply the sound of major 7 sharp 11. You could also play major 7 sharp 11 in a static sense. Okay, so check it out. If I'm playing There Will Never Be Another You, and I play the last 4 bars of the melody at the end, and I play into this top of the form, the first time I'm just going to play I'm going to play a major 7 arpeggio, okay, so you can hear it. The second time I'm going to play a major 7 sharp 11 type sound, and you can hear the slight difference, okay? So here's the end of the 4 bars. I'm going to play F major 7, my F major 7 at the top. Okay. That's literally arpeggio, 1 3 5 7. Okay, with a little bit of elbow grease. Okay, so now I'm going to play the exact same passage, and on the top of the form, I'm going to play an F major 7 in my key, sharp 11 type sound. Okay, and you can hear this going to be a little bit brighter in terms of how I hear that sound. Okay, and all I played, if you keep in score, was 1 3 sharp 11. That's it. 1 3 sharp 11 7. Sorry. So it's a big difference between that and. Make sense? Okay, so now let me put them both together. I'll play major 7 and resolve that sound to F major. Okay, so it'll be the same 4 bars at the end, then F major 7 sharp 11 for the first bar. Then I'm gonna like sneakily resolve that to F major 7 in bar 2. Okay, so you're gonna hear tension and release. Okay, sharp 11 is a tension, right? That's not what we have in the. I'll try to clear off this disaster of a keyboard. I just got this metal mouthpiece in the mail yesterday, and I put it on 2 seconds before I called you guys. So I'll just show you. It looks like a disaster. I have all this stuff on my keyboard right here. But if I think I can get around it enough to play this chord. If I play this chord, right, which is E flat major concert, turn it up here, and I play this note, that's a tension. We can all agree, right? It's not in the chord. Now, if I adjust it, okay, as a piano player, and I do this, no problem, right? Okay, so now check this out. If I play this here's a major 7 again. That's really tense compared, right? So all I did was I play a sharp 5. Okay, so let me do this for you. I'm gonna play the last 4 bars of There Will Never Be Another You, and I'm gonna play again at the top of the form in bar 1, major 7 sharp 11, and bar 2, I'm gonna try my best to show you the release of the tension to just play F major 7. Okay, here we go. Basically, I'm always trying to be a piano player. That's what I really want to do, because if I'm playing piano, it'd be like that's all I'm doing. So as a saxophone player, I can't do that. So I got to arpeggiate this stuff in a way that makes it really noticeable. Does it make sense? Okay. I can also do this. This is one of my favorite ones. That's got a lot more attention to it, right? There I played 1 sharp 11, 1 sharp 9, sharp 11, and 7. So at the piano, it sounds like this. Right? Piano players get all the fun, man. They can, and they also can derail. Like, I've never felt more vibed out in my life when I was in New York, and I would like, yeah, this is my stuff. I'm gonna play it, and then like a piano player's like, no, you're not. This is what you're gonna play, and if you don't listen, I'm just gonna continue to make you sound like trash. You know, you know what I mean? Because they have that ability. I think jazz also, like, you know, think about how risk averse you are right now. Because if you're like not that risk averse, I think that's going to have a tremendous effect on what kind of music in the jazz can you play. And if you're tremendously risk averse, that's also going to have a big effect on how you develop. When I went to college, I was not interested in having people play chords that were not on the paper. I was like, no, forget that, man. I practiced stuff on the paper. You know, let's play what's on the paper. And then the older I got and the more music I let into my life, influence-wise, the more I was like, absolutely. Like the chord says D, and I'm just do whatever you want. You know, and I think that transition for me was gradual. You know, so anyway, when I teach, especially, again, I keep saying this so little time, I don't need to go all over the place, but a lot of what we talk about is objective, and some of it is also, a lot of it is subjective, right? So I'm trying to give you the tools that you can put into practice to make some cool sounds that aren't just like, because you hear people say like, okay, let's play outside the key, and then it's like you noodle your fingers and you're like, oh, jazz mustache, like you played some cool stuff. It's like, that's not at all how that works. You know, it has to be informed by practice and by theory. So anyway, that's a long way of describing the fourth motive major. Fifth motive major is mixolydian. Okay, so everybody knows what that is, dominant 7. Okay, and in terms of static or resolving, it's both. Okay, it's not going to be a resolution for the most part. Okay, so dominant 7 goes to 1. It also is static. Think about like rhythm changes bridge, right? Those are technically static dominant chords. Although, you know, how many of you think about the bridge of rhythm changes as being, you know, circle of fourth dominant chord starting on the third of the key? Anybody think about that? So like, yeah, okay. So if you're in the key of C, right, and you want to know like, okay, where do I start in the bridge? You go up a third, major third, and then you go around the circle of fourths from there, and that leads you back to the tonic. Okay, so if we're in C, you go to the third, E, E7, A7, D7, G7, and then G7 goes 5-1 to C. Make sense to everybody? Again, this is being recorded, so you can hash this all out again after the fact. But the interesting thing about that is that although it is circle, so Christian, you said circle of fourth dominance, right? You could also think about it being 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, because functionally speaking, the only difference between going like E7 to A7, for instance, compared to E7 to A major, is one note, right? All the ingredients of playing like dominant 7 to a dominant 7, and it's like looks like a 1 chord, are the same except for the 7th. Think about it. E7 going to A7, you have a G natural on the top on A7. E7 going to A major, you have a G sharp. So think about all the lines you've ever practiced in all 12 keys. I would bet like less than 10% of the lines that you practice in all 12 keys resolve to the 7 of any chord. They probably resolve to the root, the 3rd, the 5th, or the 9th, right? So this is a long way of saying that most of the time you can play any kind of vocabulary in that position where it's going 5-1 in dominance. You can play the same way you can voice lead that you would if you played a 5-1 to major. All right. And again, that's something you can unpack after the fact. But you know, let's put static dominant before I move on into the example of There'll Never Be Another You, right? So measures 13, 14 of that tune are F7. So right? So if you have that and I played G major 7, there's G7 sharp 11 in that context, it would sound, again, a little bit brighter. So I'll play from measure 9 of that song. Okay, so in 13, 14, I play something like. That's a really bright implication on a dominant chord. So if I play that against the chord, that sounds a lot different than playing this. both sound totally fine, right? But one has a little bit more of a thing to it. Would you guys agree in that in terms of how you hear it? One's more tense. So like you could also do what I call go for the jugular, which is to play like a super intense version of dominant. So if I played dominant 7 altered, for instance, in this context, it would sound like this. And then it almost becomes like the chord is obliterated, right? And the only reason why that somehow works is because I played, if I'm doing my job right, a good 2-5 back to the tonic. Okay, so I did like a okay job of that. I'm doing one more time, see if I can do a better job. So all throughout that example, chorus or whatever, I'm doing in real time a lot of the stuff that we've talked about for the past, half an hour, which is to take different modes and different implications and apply them to the harmony. Again, that's like several lessons or several weeks down the road, but just giving you some, again, hopefully an answer as to why we do some of this stuff. Sixth mode of major is Aeolian. Okay, so A to A in the key is C. Aeolian is represented most commonly by A and then root of the scale and then AEO for Aeolian. Okay, that's one way. Or minor flat 6. Write that down. Minor flat 6. Sometimes you see it as minor 7 flat 13, although it's a lot rarer than minor flat 6. So tunes that I write that have Aeolian sound, I use minor flat 6. Almost everybody in New York that I play with does minor flat 6. Minor 7 flat 13 is pretty rare. Last mode of major is Locrian. Okay, so in this key it'd be B Locrian. It's a really important chord symbol because you do see it quite often, half diminished. Okay, so minor 7 flat 5, right? Almost unanimously, it's in a position of moving towards a resolution in the context of a minor 2-5-1. There are very few examples where it's not. Here's two of them: Night and Day, measure 9. So here's the song. Yeah. Sorry. Half diminished. So it's called all kind of descending. That's one example where it's not in a part of a 2-5-1. The other one is this one. Other chord. Okay, inner urge. Write those down. Those are examples of half diminished chords that don't go 2-5-1. Okay, inner urge, night and day, starting to measure 9. Okay, anyway, those are the different modes of major. Okay, and those are important to play in that fashion and think about the chords. Okay, because I guarantee you, nobody is so unvulnerable that they have looked at a lead sheet and they've been like half diminished in a key that I didn't practice ever. They're like, right? Everybody's had that feeling. I feel like most people on a minor 2-5-1 do one of three things. They get to that diminished chord and they're like, nah, I'm good. I'll just play 5-1. So we just like don't play it. Or like, oh, arpeggio, like same thing for 10 years. Or like nonsense. Those are the three things that happen. Okay. Or some kind of, and as you get better, I'm being facetious here, but think about your own experience. I'm sure people have in this Zoom call have felt frightened about half diminished chords, and there's a good reason for that. There's not a whole lot of vocabulary that isn't kind of also parsed together with the 5 chord that gets you over a 2-5-1, right? Maybe some of you guys have heard from your instructors in the past that to play a minor 2-5-1, you play harmonic minor from the destination. Does that make sense? So in other words, if you have a 2-5-1 in the key of D minor, you play D harmonic minor over the whole thing. You guys have heard this like one scale fits all approach. That's fine, but it has nothing to do with the half diminished chord most of the time. Okay, so with half diminished, being more informed about like, okay, what's the function, what's the arpeggio, what's the scale, yada yada. I think it can help over the long haul of practicing. You feel more comfortable when you see half diminished chords in the wild, shall we say. All right, guys, I have had a tremendous amount of coffee, but it's not really the coffee, it's just my love for being a theory dork. What questions do you have? We have like 7 minutes here before the next thing. Tate, got a question?
We have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Really? Okay. We don't go to 11, huh?
Oh crap. I think we're supposed to be getting out at the 55. He usually just breaks up the rooms. So
Okay. Well, let me say this then. In the case that we do get broken up, again, my email's in that chat. Send me an email. I'd love to keep in touch. And if you want to work together outside of this, let me know. I'll also send the PDF. I can't get it. It's on my other laptop, so I'll just send it to Marcus and he'll send it out to you guys. Any questions though? The 1 minute we have, don't be shy. Covered a lot of ground. Sam, what's up?
What do you play? I'm sorry, I was out of the room, so you might have heard, or you might have said it. But what do you play over the 5 chord of a minor 2-5-1?
A lot of things. You could play altered dominant. You could play half whole diminished. You could play fifth mode of harmonic minor of where you're going. So if you have a 2-5-1 in D minor, you could play B flat melodic minor on A7 if you treat it as A7 altered. You could play A half whole diminished if you played it as A7 flat 9. You could play A mixolydian flat 2 flat 6, which is an extremely complicated way of saying harmonic minor of D, the fifth mode of D harmonic minor, right? It's because if I play D harmonic minor, right, and I go, and I start on 5, that scale, the jazz theory $25,000 a semester name for that is mixolydian flat 2 flat 6, right? But it's also just the fifth mode harmonic minor. So if you've heard people play like this, that is a very dressed up pig of playing a D harmonic minor. That's it. You know what I mean? There's no specificity to that. But I'll say this again, like I wish I could talk forever, but pre-1960, you hear almost everybody. Like you're not going to hear Hank Mobley voice lead a minor 2-5-1 using melodic minor. You're just not going to hear it. You're going to hear like what I just played. Okay, because that was the vibe. Maybe you hear this in Sunny Sid or something. Right? Like some diminished type stuff. Right? And then like, this is going to be a hilarious thing to have been recorded. But if you hear like a modern player, there's a lot more there. I was playing altered dominance, okay, on the 5 chord, and I was also using more angular stuff, but if you can find me a recording of Hank Mobley using some dope intervals like that, let me know. But the guy who got closest to it and again, I'm probably jumping through making a lot of assumptions here, but the guy who used the most intervals of that like era is Eddie Harris. So if you haven't checked out Eddie Harris, that dude was incredible. I feel like if he was alive today, we would be best friends because that's the exact same way I want to play the saxophone. Just like these crazy, weird intervals. He has a book that I'm going to buy. I've been meaning to buy it for a long time called The Intervalistic Approach, and it'll kick your butt really hard on intervals. Also, shameless plug, if you guys want to get any of my stuff from my store, you can use the code JAZZ and you get half off. So I have A2 books and vocabulary books and all that stuff. But I'd rather you get the Toffanel and the Gobert articulation book, the Lemony House books. Those are all great too. Let's see. So Tate, are we supposed to get a notification that says we're done?
Yeah, when Marcus is done, he's gonna kick us out. So I guess we could just keep doing questions for now.
Great. Yeah. Who has a question before I get told to shut up?
Yeah, I got one. So like for like technique stuff, lately I've been working on like playing like bird heads and like 12 keys. Is there anything else like besides like scales or doing like that will help technique like with like ear training also involved too?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what you're doing with the bird heads is awesome. That's a really good project, really good summer project too. I think, for knowing what I know about your playing too, I feel like integrating the altissimo into your playing is something you're probably working on. It's something that is like a big goal for you, to have it be fluid over this summer. So there are some exercises that I'm sure we're going to get kicked off here, but just send me a text. I'll send you guys. I'll upload a video. But there are things you can do, like that I think will focus your efforts on that one specific region or whatever you're trying to do. For me though, like playing lines in all 12 keys is still something I do from time to time, and then bumping them up an octave. So that's kind of what you're doing with the bird heads, I suppose. There are some extreme, range technique things that I work on that'll be in that PDF that I send, where you're playing scales that are separated out by these very, very wide intervals, which is another way of working on stuff. I think playing cells, or shapes is something we didn't really talk about today, but that's something that can be kind of cool, so like, and then taking those shapes and cells and trying to morph them into harmony, you know what I mean? That's something that is kind of cool. And you can, like, I can give you shapes for sure, but you can also, one of the best things to do is make up your own shapes and then try to see how they apply, so like one that I'll give you before I get kicked out here is a major 7 sharp 11 one, right? So it's basically what I already gave you. 7 1, okay, 3 sharp 11, 7 1 3 sharp 11. Okay, so if I play that in the key of D flat concert, that's the sound, right? And that would apply traditionally to a major 7 sharp 11 chord. It could also apply to anything that's diatonic to that key, right? So taking that shape and then maybe, okay, I want to expand it to include one other thing. What is the other thing and where does it come, right? In terms of placements, like let's say I want to do that same shape but add the 9. So that's a thinker, you know what I mean? In terms of, I have to be cognitively aware of what I'm doing, right? A lot of the tunes that I've written in the past 5 years have come out of this kind of practicing. I have a tune that goes like this, right? Which is like something that starts low and ends high, but it's literally having practiced like diatonic fifths a whole step apart. This kind of thing. And I was like, oh, what if I linked them together? This kind of thing. So I think thinking in these terms will probably be helpful, just to get the imagination going. But send me a text, Christian. I'll send you some other stuff too.
Sounds good.
Cool. Any other questions? I guess Marcus is kind of running late on the other one.
What was that articulation book called? And
how's
it spelled too?
Oh man, I don't know. I would start with Gobert, Gobbert, and then Taffanel, just kind of approximate it. Taffanel, I think is what it is. You'll know. Just write go, like, I use Google to figure it out for me, but shoot your best shot on Gobert and Taffanel in Google, and then write articulation. And Tate's on it. There you go. Fellas, thanks for everything. I'll see you probably in the triad pairs thing at 2. And like I said again, keep in touch. I'm really easy to get a hold of. One last thing. I'm hosting a saxophone workshop on Wednesday from 9 to 1 p.m. It's a 4-hour intensive on Zoom. It's $50. If any of you guys want to join, let me know. We'll talk about a lot more stuff. So anyway, see you at 2. Thanks, everybody.